guys, I'm Erin and welcome back to my channel. Today I am bringing you a book review for the book The Jasmine Throne by Tasha Suri. This book comes out on June 8th, and so I was very grateful and lucky to get an e-arc to review for you today. And so I was thrilled, I was ecstatic to get this book. It was one of my most anticipated releases of the year because I really fell in love with this author last year when I read her other two books, and I was very excited to see what she's going to be doing with this first book in this new trilogy. First, I'll tell you a little bit about what this book is about. In this book, we are following primarily two main characters in a setting that is inspired by the history and lore of India. And first we have Malini, who is a disgraced princess, and her brother, the emperor, has exiled her to be imprisoned in this tower in a neighboring nation that has been conquered by her empire. And this tower that she is sent to live in is this kind of ancient, was previously an ancient temple in the time of this nation that before it was conquered, and it used to hold the site of these magical waters. That was a big site and a big piece of the magic and religious practices of this nation. So she is sent to live out her days in this temple. And then we also have Priya, who is a maidservant who works for the ruler of this conquered nation, kind of the, I guess, governor of this conquered nation. And she is a maidservant who is one of the ones assigned to tend to Malini and the tower, mostly tend to the tower, keeping it clean and all those things. And so she has to make this treacherous climb up this temple tower every day, and she is also hiding a big secret about her past and kind of who she actually is. And one day, Malini, our disgraced princess, witnesses Priya's secret manifesting, and so she ends up enlisting Priya's help in this kind of begrudging alliance because Malini would like to escape the tower and overthrow her brother, and she needs Priya's help to escape. And Priya is also looking for some of her family. So they end up this begrudging alliance to kind of help with getting out of the tower, as well as helping a lot of more kind of some political machinations happening. And so that is kind of the basic setup of our plot. So the first thing I want to talk about in this book was the setting. This setting is incredible. This is one thing that I knew going in Tasha Suri does really well based on her previous two books, is creating this just lush setting. I think she does a really good job painting the picture of the rooms and locations themselves while you're in these locations in the story. As well, I just think her world building is very well done and thorough. You really get a sense for the different nations and the cultures in this book. And this book, and especially, I think the way she did the world building with these conquered nations was really interesting, and really seeing how the cultures of this conquered nation is kind of clashing with the cultures of the conqueror nation, and how the conqueror nation is trying to kind of push out a lot of these cultures. And you learn a lot about kind of the lost religion of this nation that ended up being kind of stuffed out. There's like a little bit of tendrils left, but it's largely a lost religion. And I really thought this religious aspect of this book was really quite interesting, just in kind of it was like a magic tied into the religion, which I really enjoyed. And as well, seeing some of the story of the decisions made by the heads of this religion, and a lot of the lore going into that was one of the things I really loved about this book, was the development of that. This book is also told through multiple point of views. I think there's probably 8 or 9 in total, but Priya and Malini are definitely the two primary ones. And there's a couple secondary that pop up a good amount, and then there's a few that are just kind of like 1 or 2 offs. And I thought it was really well done. It never felt overwhelming in the number of point of views you had, and I think having especially those kind of 1 or 2 off ones was really great for giving you kind of interlude style like tidbits to really round out the world. It really rounded out the plot, and kind of seeing some of the other information to kind of fill in some gaps here and there. As well, I say for characters, I said Malini and Priya are really the main two, but we do have a third pretty strong main female, and I think Suri really did a great job with these 3 characters. They're all, you have the exiled princess, the maidservant, and the third one is the native wife of the governor. So the governor is from the conquered nation, and he married this character who was from the conquered nation. And so I think each of these 3 characters were excellently done. They each are very well rounded, and I thought they all have strengths and flaws. They felt very real, very realized characters, and I really like how Tasha Suri had each of these characters flexing those strengths and finding their place in the story and with the directions that each of their individual plot lines go, as well as how they interact and intersect with each other. Story-wise, I thought the pacing was well done. I definitely can understand why some people would think the first half is slow, because as far as literal action-wise, the second half is definitely higher on action, and the first is a lot of building of tension, a little bit, some more political maneuvering more than like heavy action, and so I definitely understand why some people might find that slow. I really enjoyed both parts of that, and I think for what the story is, the pacing of it was well done. I don't think she needed to shorten that first slower half at all. I do think it was paced well for the kind of story she was telling. But depending on your thoughts on the action versus just kind of behind the scenes tension building maneuvering, you might find the first half slow, and I think that's totally fair. Your mileage may vary on that. There is also a sapphic love story in this book. That's one of the things I've heard kind of hyped up the most, and I will say the amount it was hyped as, oh, fantasy sapphic love story, did make me think it was going to be more love story in this book, but really I should have known better, because based on how Suri does her relationships in the first two books she wrote, each of those are kind of standalone companions, so they each have complete stories, and in those the two romances were very slow burn, and I should have expected that since this book is first in a trilogy, and it's not a trilogy where it's companion books like her duology was, it's direct sequels. I absolutely should have expected the romance to be a slow burn that takes place over the whole story trilogy and not just this book. So definitely should have expected that based on my experience with this author, but I still think it was excellently executed. Just kind of in case you were expecting a full love story to unfold in book one, that is not quite what happens. It's more of the beginnings of it, and I just thought it was really well done. It's very slow burn. There's a lot of yearning, some good scenes, A+. I think that's one thing that Tasha Suri really won me over with her first two books, which is how well she weaves romance into her fantasy books. As someone who loves romance and also really likes romantic subplots in fantasy, she's one of the best, in my opinion, at doing well included romantic subplots in her fantasy books. So I'm very excited to see the continuing development of this relationship in the next one. And then the last kind of area I wanted to touch on with this book is the magic. This was where I had my chief complaint with her previous books, where in her previous books I ended the books loving everything except the magic, because in both of them I felt like the magic was explained kind of poorly. Like I didn't feel like it needed more explanation as far as volume on page. I just felt like the explanations she had on the page needed to be better worded, and I never quite got a grasp on the magic. But this book, she really improved on that, and I thought the magic was great in this book. It was really interesting. I also think I just enjoyed this magic system better as what it was and how it was kind of tied into this mystical waters and tied into the kind of sort of dying religion of this conquered nation. And that being said, I also do think she just did a better job at explaining and building it. It was very well explained. I very much understood the magic this time. It did not leave me kind of in a sort of confused haze like her previous book, so I'm very, very pleased to say she definitely improved on that part in this one, and that was the one thing I was really looking for from this one as far as judging her as an author, is did she improve in this area, and I'm very glad to say she did. And so all of this being said, you could probably guess that I gave this a 5-star. I have said pretty much only glowing things because I really did love this book. It's even better than her first two, and I am very excited to read the second, even though it's going to be a long wait because the first one hasn't even been released yet. So I absolutely recommend this to any people who are looking for new and interesting settings with the India-inspired setting. If you're looking for really a fantasy that's led by strong female characters and interesting and well-written female characters, definitely this one. This one has a lot of political maneuvering in it, so if you're into that kind of fantasy, definitely recommend. And yeah, I thought it was great, and I cannot wait for the second one. It will absolutely be making my most anticipated releases for next year. So once again, this book comes out on June 8th if you're interested in picking it up, and I hope you enjoyed this review. I hope if you pick this book up that you enjoy the book. I absolutely also recommend picking up her other books. I really do enjoy this author. I think if I made a favorite authors list, she would probably be on it. And I will see you in my next video.